Perfect. And so, Natalia, good afternoon, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar Planning for Growth, the Power of a Business Plan. My name is Mauricio Vasquez, Executive Director of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Montgomery County. And it's a pleasure having Natalia Valderrama with us, an expert financial planner who's going to walk us through this presentation and exercise. This presentation, it's going to be kind of an in-depth presentation on financial planning and forecasting. So what we're going to do for the presentation is, as Natalia walks us through this presentation, feel free to write the questions in the chat. And then I will be reading the questions as we move along. If there's anything that we need to address right away, I'll kind of like raise my hand and get into Natalia's attention. Otherwise, we will continue to go through the presentation, and then we'll go through all of your questions. There will be a few polls and interactions throughout the presentation as well. So stay tuned for the polls. And without any further ado, I'm going to leave the room to Natalia. Natalia, bienvenida.
Muchas gracias, Mauricio. Thank you so much. The folks that have made it here, I understand we're getting towards the end of our workday, and you've made a decision to spend some time here with us and invest in your education. And so I commend you for that. Thank you. All right, so quick intro on myself. So born in New York, my parents are from Colombia. I lived there for many years, but Atlanta is my home. This is what I call home. I've built my career in finance. I had the blessing of starting in investment banking in New York, fresh out of college. So I was thrown in with the wolves from the get-go. It was an incredible experience. I was always around transactions. So mergers, acquisitions, minority investments, even some IPOs. So all of these transactions are hundreds of millions of dollars, multi-billion-dollar decisions. So you better believe there was a business plan attached to it. All right. These types of decisions are high stakes. And you have to have a plan and really understand why you're doing this and if that's the right decision to make. Right. So I've been around business plans and business cases my whole life at a large scale, but also at a small scale. And anyway, so I did investment banking for some time, and then I moved over to corporate development. So in mid-size and large-size corporates where I spent my time really doing strategy. So think, where do we want to be as a company in 3 to 5 years, and how do we get there? Right? What's the roadmap? How do we mobilize an entire company and people around common objectives, right? And then, this year I took the leap and started my own business. Oh, sorry guys, give me 2 seconds. Hold on, my dog just got in here. Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. So for those who might have come a little late, Natalia will begin the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to type the questions in the chat. I will continue to monitor the presentation. If anything needs to be raised to Natalia's attention, I will do so. Otherwise, we'll address most questions after the presentation. Go ahead, Natalia.
Yep, thank you. Sorry, didn't want my dog barking here. Apologize. So anyway, this year I made the decision to start my own business. I've accumulated all this knowledge and this experience, and I feel really passionate about sharing that with my community. And so the mission behind my business is really empowering and helping minority-owned, founder-led, family-owned businesses really position themselves to scale, to be sustainable in the long term, and to really professionalize their entire operation so things can run smoother, and have more efficiencies, all that kind of good stuff. And so that's why we're here today. I'm hoping that you can walk away today with some learnings and think about it from the lens of a financial planning advisor. How do you look at your company from that lens? It really is a powerful thing. Okay, so let's So how are we going to spend our time today? All right, we're going to talk really quickly about business growth, examples of business growth. How do you tap into different types of funding? What are your different funding mechanisms? Then we're going to talk about a business plan. What is a business plan? What are the components? Why does it matter? And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time on section 3 over here, the case study. All right. We're going to dive deep into the information. And so hang in there with me. I know it's a lot. It's meaty, but hopefully, I've simplified it in a way that I think is going to be easier to understand. My goal, again, for you coming out of this today is to try and think about this for your own business. All right. You're not going to have all of the answers in just one session, right? A business plan takes weeks, if not months, to build. So what we're doing here today is very high level, but it should start to get you thinking about how to think about your business in a different way. All right. So, okay, I think Mauricio mentioned this before we jump into the content. So this is not the funnest of contents, okay? I've tried to think about how to make it engaging, but we're gonna jump into the numbers. We're gonna get pretty deep into the numbers. And so to make this a little bit more engaging, throughout, I'm gonna ask a few questions. We're gonna have some polls. I ask that you please participate. Sometimes I'm gonna ask for you to drop some answers in the chat. It gives me an idea of where people are and the exposure they've had, and so it's really helpful if you participate in those. All right. Okay, so Susie, I think you just jumped in, or somebody. Welcome. All right, guys. So we'll jump right in. Understanding growth in small businesses. All right, so there's the regular sort of day-to-day growth that is typical of a business. Right? So you're chasing leads, you're talking to
Natalia, sorry
prospects.
to interrupt. We still see the introduction slide. So I don't know if you're moving to a different slide now.
Oh, resume. Hello.
Okay.
Okay.
Better.
Do you see the table of contents?
We see the table of contents now. Yes.
All right. Okay, I think we're there. Some more folks coming in. Mauricio, should I continue, or do you want to make a brief stop for those that are new in the room?
If you want to do a 20-second recap, and then we will continue.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to those that just joined. Thank you for being here and investing some time in financial education. We're going to be talking today about the items right here in the table of contents. Business growth, very quickly. What are some examples? What are the different types of funding mechanisms that you can tap into? What is a business plan? What are the components? Why it matters? And then we're going to spend most of our time on the case study. We're going to go deep into the numbers, and we're going to build some projections and a forecast for a very specific company. Okay? And then we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. Okay. So my goal out of here is for you to start thinking about what this looks like for your own business. All right, we're going to go through a restaurant example, but think about what this looks like for you. I'll ask some questions, and I ask that you please participate in the chat and in the polls that we will bring up on the screen. All right, so let's jump into it. Growth in small business. So again, you're constantly chasing growth, right? Everybody that has a business is always looking for more revenue, for more customers, for more leads. But the type of growth we're going to talk about today is growth that requires significant capital. All right, so this is not your business as usual type of thing. This is you making a very intentional decision to make an investment, hoping, of course, that it pays off and that you get a return. So what are some examples of growth that we see of some of these projects? Expanding into a new location, right? If you have a brick and mortar business, you can always open more locations, right? Purchasing equipment, machinery, vehicles, any type of equipment that you use for your job, for your business, right? That costs money. You want to really evaluate that. Expanding geographically, expanding into a new product or service, a significant investment in technology, these are the type of things where you're making a significant investment and you want to run it through a business plan to confirm if this is what you really want to do, or perhaps to sway you away from that decision before you pull the trigger. Okay? So I think everybody here knows that it takes money to make money, right? That's the way it goes, right? We need to make an investment before we see it paying off, right? So you need to evaluate, how risky it is, what do the returns look like, what's my time horizon, all that good stuff. And of course, you need capital, right? You need the funding to carry out your idea. So what are the funding options? You got your own funds, company funds, right? This is the most common. Ideally, you have enough of this to fund it yourself. Next, family and friends. This is a very common one when you're an early stage business. Next, we have a line of credit. This is essentially like a credit card. It functions like a credit card. It's short-term funding. If you've been in business for 2 to 3 years and you don't have a line of credit, I encourage you to talk to your bank, banking relationship, and see if you can get one. Super, super important for you to have access to that. Then we got grants, which is free money, right? We all love free money. Grants are more involved though, right? You have to apply. There's many times thousands of applicants, right? The odds are not necessarily in your favor, but it's free money, right? Next, you got SBA loan and bank loans, right? Here you can tap into more capital, but again, they're going to be checking your credit. They're going to be looking through your financials. You're going to have to explain your use of funds, all types of things, right? And then finally, equity, right? This is you pitching your story and your plan to a potential investor. All right, this is the most involved of all the funding types, but it can also have the most meaningful impact to your business. All right. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here. Mauricio, if you don't mind getting the poll there, I'm curious to see, just to get a gauge on the room, if you've been able to tap into any of these types of funding. Ooh, no, that's not the right question. This is the one about funding. So hold off there a second, guys. We're getting this one. Okay, here we go. So if you've been able to tap into any of these sources of funding, if you don't mind just quickly selecting the ones that you have been able to get, what kind of funding have you received for your business?
Línea de crédito, bank loan, creo.
Hello, Luisa, are you asking a question?
No, sorry. Hi.
You're fine, you're fine.
Yeah, so we encourage everyone to answer the poll that's on your screen right now. Perfect.
Okay, all right. I see some things in here, bank loans, lines of credit. Okay. Some
All
of you
right.
have gotten some grants, some loans. All right.
I'm going to show the results. This is what we get.
Let's see.
Okay. All right, good. So a little bit of a different mix here. Several of you have lines of credits and have tapped into bank loans. Wonderful. All right, perfect. All right. And as you know, right, the more involved or the more capital you're looking for, the more hoops you're going to have to jump, the more you're going to have to justify why you need the funds and what you're going to do with them, right? Banks, they want to make sure that you've thought this through, that you have a plan, right? And so in comes the business plan, right? All right, guys, so let's talk about a business plan. So did you know this was a Harvard Business Review study that was conducted across thousands of companies. And they found that companies that incorporated business planning into their regular business doubled and tripled their chances of success. All right. And I think that's a telling story because starting a business is a risky endeavor, right? the odds are sort of stacked against you from the front, unfortunately. Most businesses that launch close within the first few years, all right? They don't succeed. But if you knew that building a plan increases your chances of success 2 times and 3 times, wouldn't you want to do that? Right? And so that's what the Harvard Business Review study found. It also found that businesses that plan have on average 30% more sales growth and are 60% have 60% higher profitability, right? They have more margin than the folks and the businesses that do not plan. All right. So it pays to plan. It really does. So let's define what a business plan is. I think most of you guys have a good idea of what a plan is. If you don't mind, in the chat really quickly, share some ideas of what you think a business plan is. Let me see what comes through the chat. Doesn't have to be one full definition, but when you think of a business plan, what's a business plan to you? What do you think are some of the components of it? What does it tell you? Don't be shy. The compass of the business. All right, the compass. So that's like the north, right? Where are you headed? Structure, industry, goals. Absolutely. How are you going to structure it? What industry do you play with in, right? What's your market like? What are your objectives? A roadmap for your company with clear objectives. Absolutely. How the business will start and scale in the future. Yep, these are all good answers, by the way. Here's sort of my definition of a business plan. It's a strategic blueprint. Somebody said something like that, right? A roadmap. It forces you to answer these questions. What are you doing? Where are you going? Why are you going there? And how are you going to achieve it? All right, these are basic questions that a business plan will force you to answer and get very, very clear on. All right, a business plan allows you to build credibility with lenders, with investors, with employees, with stakeholders, right? And there is a component of a business plan that's all around the financials. All right, what are your startup costs? What are going to be your ongoing costs? What's the forecast? What's cash flow looking like, right? All of that stuff. And any good business plan or business case has some type of execution plan attached to it. Who's doing what, when, right? What are the targets? Okay. So that is a business plan. All right. So let's talk about what are the components of a business plan. And we're going to get a little bit technical here. In the finance world, there is the plan for your entire business, for your overall business, is called a business plan. Here are some of the key components of that, right? What are you in the business of? What's your market, right? What are the competitors in your industry? What are you selling? What's your marketing plan? What's your operating plan? All of these good things, okay? This is a business plan. That's the whole big picture of your company. But today we're going to actually talk about a business case, okay? Slightly different version, but a business case is a plan that is specific to one very specific project. So when we talked about earlier, right, you're opening a new location, you're expanding geographically, you're buying machinery and equipment, right? When you're making those decisions, a business case means you are already running an operation. You already have a business that is going, and you are thinking about whether or not you should pursue a specific project or initiative. And that's where a business case comes in. Slightly different flavor. It has some of the same components. But here you're really looking at, there's some type of situation that is prompting you to make this decision or to make a decision. What is the situation? What are the options that are open to you? And analyzing the options, and then based on your analysis, deciding which one is the way to move forward. Okay? Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Okay, so, okay. So for today's session, for really the rest of our time here together, we are going to focus, we're really going to build a business case, actually. And we're going to focus here on number 4, financial analysis and projections. All right. A real business case, and I've done these many times before, usually takes 2 to 4 months because there's a lot of inputs that are coming from different people. You're vetting your assumptions. You're not just putting numbers on a piece of paper. Okay. There's a very rigorous process that goes behind a business case. Okay. So doing it the right way takes time. But today we're going to go through a condensed, simplified version, and we're going to focus only on the financial aspect. All right. Okay, guys. So here, Mauricio, if you don't mind, we have another little question here for the group. The one about the business plan. If they've built a business plan, if you don't mind pulling it up. All right, guys. So just to get a gauge for the people in the room, please take a second to answer this question. Have you put together a formal plan or a formal case? Right? If it took you a few days to do it, it was probably not thorough enough. Okay.
And by the way, all these questions are anonymous, so feel free to answer the questions. Don't be shy. No one's looking at what your answers are because that's not information that's captured in a poll. So.
Okay, we have some answers coming in.
We got some answers. We're still missing a few answers. So take a look at the poll, and if you can give us some feedback before we end the poll in a few seconds.
All right, we got 7 answers. There's 9 of us here, 10. All right, guys. Yeah, maybe we end the poll. Let's see where we landed. All right. So one person here has built a plan with all the bells and whistles. One person has built a plan but didn't get into the forecasting piece. And then most of you have maybe built pieces of it or none at all. All right. So that's good to know. It gives me some sense of kind of where everybody is. Thank you. Okay. And just curious, for the 2 people that said they've built a plan, if you don't mind unmuting yourself, I just want to ask, the plan was for what type of business and about how long did it take you to make that plan?
Hi, my name is Frank Ortiz.
Hola, Frank.
And,
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. I have a janitorial and cleaning business, but it's certified for GMP cleaning for labs and medical
Awesome.
facilities.
Okay. Yes.
So I had experience working for a larger company years ago, and so based on that experience, I created business cases with forecast because I
Awesome.
knew of what services and products were needed and the personnel that was needed. So I created that, and that's how I create most of my quotes based on that knowledge. And then I see if I
Awesome.
hit my targets or I need to change things.
Wonderful. So it's a planning tool for you. It allows you to make decisions,
Right.
tweak some things.
But because I
Wonderful.
had the experience to do it in the past, so it was easier for me to build quotes that way based on actuals, you know. So
Of course, of course. Thank you, Frank. All right. Awesome. All right, guys. So let's see. Oops. All right. So we're going to jump into the case study here. Let me give you some high-level details of what this business case is required and what the customer was. This was an actual customer I had some years ago who I helped. So they were the owners of a restaurant, of a local restaurant. They had been operating for about 3 years. They were doing really well. People loved their food. The place was staying pretty full. And so they were considering, should we open a second location? All right, that was the question. Now, what's the capital need? It's $340,000. So that's a hefty number. I'm going to explain to you how we're gonna go through how we arrive at that number. And the funding source. So this is a lot of money, right? So they were funding it partly themselves, so with cash they had at hand, and partly with a loan. That was the thought. All right. What was the idea here? The idea was it was going to take 3 months to build out the space, to retrofit it for their operation. The restaurant, just so you know, it was like a bowl concept. Think of like a chipotle, right? Where you go, you get your bowl and you tell them what you want. It was that same thing. It wasn't necessarily just Mexican type of food. It was bowls, right? But casual, fast dining experience. All right. So they were leasing the space, and the folks before them were also of a restaurant. So the retrofitting wasn't that involved. The idea was 3 months to build it out and to get it ready to open. And then 8 months, we were going to open the doors on month 4 and start ramping up the operation. All right, everybody with me here? Okay, well, I don't see people, so I hope so. Frank, thank you for turning on your camera. Okay. So months 1 to 3, we're setting it up, right? We're setting up the location. No cash is coming in. There's no revenue yet, right? All the cash is going out, right? Negative cash flow. Months 4 through 12, right? We open our doors. Volume slowly starts trickling up, right? So our revenue starts ramping up. We look at what's happening with our cost of goods sold, what's happening to our overhead, and our sort of net margin. All right. As expected, just to give you some flavor, the first months, as expected, you're gonna be on the negative. You're gonna be on the red, right? As things ramp up, right, you should see the numbers starting to turn. So, all right, that's it from this right here. Okay, so let's talk about the build out phase. So months 1 through 3. This is considered capital expenses, all right? Here you're buying, so one, you need a GC in the house, right? A general contractor is going to come do the work, right? You need an architect, a designer, you need to stock up your kitchen, you need to get the tables ready, right? You need to prepare, right? Keep in mind, guys, this was a few years ago, so the numbers look really low. I know cost of living has increased like crazy, right? So keep that in mind. But essentially, right, we had calculated that this was going to cost about $250,000. All right. That was expected for the first 3 months. This is the part of the plan where you're mobilizing third-party contractors. All right. All of these folks probably don't sit in your company, right? You need to go and find them. So this is when you're getting RFPs, when you're getting proposals, when you're getting estimates, right? To put a real plan together, you need real numbers. Don't try to guess. Actually talk to the architects, to the designers, to the GCs, and see, right, what does this stuff actually cost and how long is it's gonna take. All right, notice here on my list, I have a miscellaneous line. This is best practices when you do a model or a plan. You want to give yourself some wiggle room, some cushion. To be honest, this is probably not enough wiggle room, but I wanted it to be a round number for purposes of this webinar. I would give myself more wiggle room than that, but just keep in mind, always be conservative, give yourself some space to breathe, because things don't always go the way we want them, right? All right, so all of this stuff, from a sort of accounting perspective, this $250,000 is not going to sit in your income statement. This is going to go to the balance sheet, right? This is capital expenditures. Okay. All right, so now we're going to jump into the P&L, into the income statement. I want to make a disclaimer, and it's that for purposes of the webinar, I had to really simplify the model, right? So there are things that the plan needs that I'm not contemplating in our time here to make things simpler, okay? Or this is going to become a real hardcore finance class, okay? So what does this model not have? But it is important, and a real plan would have these components. One is seasonality. A lot of our businesses have some type of seasonality attached to them. You need to forecast that. That matters, right? For cash flow purposes, that matters. In the restaurant business, food and beverage, when the weather gets a little colder, most businesses see a downtick in their traffic, at least in dine-in traffic, okay? But in here, we're not considering seasonality. Overtime, absolutely real, especially in that sector, but we're not calculating it here. Inflation, all of us know inflation is absolutely real, but I'm not putting it in here either. Scenario analysis, super important to run different scenarios in your plan. We're not doing it here. We don't have the time. However, just know, just as a high level thing, what we're going to build here was our base case. Base case is our best educated guess of what is going to happen, what we think is going to happen. But in scenario analysis, you build a more pessimistic scenario and you build a more optimistic scenario, and you run it through and you see what happens. That's super important. Small changes to your assumptions can make a very big difference to the results of a plan. All right. And then second, we're not considering sort of balance sheet and balance sheet type stuff, depreciation, something that needs to happen, but we're not doing it today. All right. Everybody still with me? All right, guys. Hang in there. I know this gets a little technical, so hang in there. All right, so let's jump into the forecast. Revenue forecast. Okay, we're gonna build our revenue. So first, let's think about capacity. How big the restaurant is matters, right? In this case, it's a Chipotle style restaurant, so it's small, okay? Here's the square footage. How many people can you sit in the restaurant? In this case, it was about 60 people. So if you fill it up and every chair is full, you could put up to 60 people in the place, all right? That matters. Capacity matters. Capacity can look different for your business, but it's a concept that's very relevant for some industries. So I'm about to jump into the nitty-gritty of the revenue, which is, by the way, probably the single most important part of your forecast is your revenue. This is something you need to spend a lot of time on, getting very comfortable with your assumptions and what you think is going to happen. So before I go into this one, I want to prompt people. I want to sort of pause, put a parenthesis here for a second. Think about your own business, right? Or maybe if you don't have your own business, you're thinking about starting one, whatever that business is. How would you split your revenue? How would you segment your revenue? Okay, we need to segment our revenue. So for example, in restaurants, a common way to segment revenue is dine-in revenue, takeout revenue, right? Those takeout orders, and catering, right? Some restaurants do catering. These are sort of different streams of revenue. So in your own business, what does that look like? Right? So if you're in construction or home improvement or anything like that, you might think residential versus commercial. You might think new construction versus a remodel or a combination thereof, right? Maybe, whatever it is, but you have to start thinking and sort of putting that, how can I segment my revenue? Don't go too granular because then it becomes too complex and not useful. But you can't just go one big lump of revenue. That's not helpful for business planning purposes, all right? And then once you've segmented your revenue, let's go one step further. So just so that I can get a little bit of engagement here, can somebody share, what is their business and how do you segment your revenue? If you have to segment your revenue, how would you do it? Anybody, any brave person in the room? This is helpful because this is where I want you guys to think about your own businesses.
Well, I keep a percentage of my quotes on the side, like I open another account. And all revenue that comes in has a percentage that goes on the side. Not as a SafeNet, but it could turn into more, additional stuff that I may need. If not, then it just sits on that account. To me, it works as a line of credit for myself.
Oh, I hear. So you're talking about sort of leaving some cushion, some cash in the bank. And that's absolutely smart. But I'm thinking here, you say you have a janitorial services business. So I'm thinking about, I think for you, it'd be sort of like commercial versus residential, or maybe the size of the facility. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Maybe you segmented by a type of customer or by a geography or by, I don't know, something like that. That's kind of the revenue breakdown I'm looking for. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Anybody? I think Tunde, I think you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I'm in construction project management. I'm
Yeah.
actually, but I'm really working more to grow the construction services part of my skill set. So for me, it would be first of all working as an owner's rep, helping the owner organize the different services, architects, engineers, etc. And then of course the construction project management portion of it. And then the last piece is using data, which is now a big part of design, to help them keep all the data they need for maintenance of all the units, like the HVAC units, when the maintenance is due, when things need to be replaced, stuff like that. So going
So you
from
have sort of like a maintenance side of the business, then you have a project management fee to project manage. Is that what I'm hearing?
that is correct, yes.
Okay, and then I think you said another one that I missed.
So the
Maybe
first is an owner's rep.
The what, I'm sorry?
An owner's rep. Owners,
Got it.
yes,
Oh, being a representative for the owner.
yes,
Okay, so okay, that makes sense. So sort of three quite distinct types of revenue, streams of revenue.
Correct.
That's helpful. All right, yeah. So, as an exercise for you all, think about what that is for your own business, because when you build a business plan, you need to break down your revenue into some sort of smaller component. And then once you've segmented your revenue, maybe there's three things, four different revenues, then you got to split it again. And the next split is volume and price. Every revenue has a volume component and a price component. All right. For example, in my business as a consultant, the volume unit that matters is projects. How many projects, right? How many projects am I expecting every month, every year, right? Another volume metric that matters for my business is number of hours. So sometimes I charge on an hourly basis. So if I'm trying to think about what my projections, I'm going to think about how many hours am I going to spend, or how many hours am I going to get on average on this, right? So quick question here, just to see if you guys are following me. For a restaurant business, a food and beverage business. So I shared with you that the different revenue types are dine-in revenue and takeout orders, yeah, for this particular business. If I have to split that further and think about volume, what would be the volume metric that matters in a restaurant, in a bakery, in any type of food and beverage business? Does anybody want to take a guess? Maybe leave it on the chat or unmute yourself. What do you think is the volume metric that is relevant in a restaurant type of setting? So takeout is the type of revenue, right? That's how you segmented the revenue, takeout versus dine-in. But then let's take just takeout. What would be the volume unit?
I think
Anybody?
from hi.
Yeah,
My
hi,
name is
Antonio.
Antonio. So I think the orders or the items that you're selling. So based on that, I mean the items of your menus, then maybe you can create like a better metric.
So you're right, you said it, orders. So what's the volume metric? Number of orders. How many orders are you getting on average? Anybody just want to say something? Yeah, for some organizations is number of contracts or number of accounts, number of customers, absolutely, right? Okay, I think we're getting an idea here of what we're talking about. So let's go back to the restaurant, right? The case study. So we said, okay, what are the volume things? So dine-in tickets. We had to forecast how many tickets or orders do we think we're gonna get. Right now we're talking average daily, all right? So we started with an estimate of 60 orders per day. Notice, so here, of course, January through March is blocked out because we're not serving customers yet. We're still building out the place, right? In April, we open our doors, customers are walking in. We're gonna estimate that we start with 60 orders on average per day. Notice how this starts ramping up, right? The word gets out, people start talking to other people, we start seeing more traffic coming in. But the next thing, because we need to think about capacity in a restaurant setting, capacity, number of seats, that's an important indicator. How many customers are usually on an order? For a restaurant style like this, think when you go to Chipotle, you're usually just ordering for yourself. Sometimes you're there with a coworker or you're taking your spouse another bowl, right? So on average, each order has 1.5 customers in it, on average, all right? If we multiply the number of orders by how many people or customers are on one order, right? The first month we have about 90 people per day. That matters because then we go back to our seating capacity. We can sit 60 at most at one time. So then comes in an indicator that really matters for the food and beverage sector or for beauty, salons, spas, anything like this. This is a metric that is relevant, which is how many times are you turning your tables? So if all 90 people walked in at once, you would fill up the place 1.5 times. Okay? The higher the turns, the healthier, the more efficient and productive the restaurant is. Okay, so this is super important. If you're talking to an investor or a bank, they're going to want to know how many turns do you have on average. All right, notice as the volume increases, we're turning our tables up to 3 times throughout the day. Okay, all right, now let's talk about the other type of revenue, which is takeout orders. So how many takeout orders on average do we expect? Right? So we started here, we're 28, we're ending the year with about 100 orders per day. Here we're still in daily sort of calculations. Let's turn this into monthly, right? Here I'm assuming that we're closing the shop once a week, all right? Which is fairly typical, right? So that means I'm going to multiply by 25 days. So here I'm simply taking, for example, takeout tickets. I'm taking 28 tickets per day times 25 gives me 700 tickets per month. Okay? People following me here? So in your business, you need to start thinking through what that volume unit is and what that average monthly volume looks like. Remember, I'm not doing seasonality. In reality, this does not look like this, okay? Because there's seasonality built in. But okay, so here we are in terms of our volume. This is probably the single most sensitive assumption you're going to make in your plan is your volume. You want to spend a lot of time here. You want to go and get some market data, look at what other restaurants that are similar, what are they doing, right? So you can sanity check your assumptions. Somebody that's going to have an influence on this number is your marketing. What are you doing in the marketing space? If you're spending a lot of marketing dollars, ads, if you did a lot of events pre-launch, you expect to have a lot more people trickle in faster, right? But anyway, this is where we landed here. And then the next piece of revenue is pricing, right? What is the average price? So in this situation, this restaurant had sort of, yeah. Anybody? I heard something. Okay. So I'm sure the menu was a lot more extensive than this, but we're again trying to just sort of put it in key buckets. A bowl, a drink, and some type of side item. All right. This was very non-complex operation. All right. This is without sales tax. So we were able to kind of come up with a per ticket average. What is the average sale per order per ticket? All right. And this is where we landed. We started at $16 for dine-in revenue, and we ended at $22 for the end of the year. Takeout was a slightly smaller, and this is something that happens often in these type of businesses. When you take out food, you normally don't get the sweet or the drink or the extra stuff, but when you're inside, you tend to sort of buy more things. All right. So we got volume and we got price. Volume times price equals revenue. All right, so now we have the two components that we need, and now we're just multiplying, right? Dining tickets, 1,500 tickets at an average of $16 per ticket, and we are at $24,000 the first month. Okay, this ramps up over time. Total revenue by the end of the year, we're expecting to make about $122,000 per month. Okay. Is everybody following? Give me a thumbs up just because I can't see people on camera. If you are following, if anything, if it's not making sense, if you want me to hit pause, give me a thumbs down. I'm happy to pause. Okay, I'm seeing thumbs up. All right, y'all. Okay. So now let's get into costs. So we're done with revenue. We're gonna go through the P&L. We're gonna start at the top, work our way downwards. So costs. What are the two most important costs, do you think, of a food and beverage business, of a restaurant? If you don't mind, just in the chat real quick. What do you think are the two largest types of costs or expenses for a restaurant, food and beverage business? Rent, that's a good guess, but not
Labor.
quite. Labor, employees, yes. People, absolutely. That's definitely your top two. I'm still missing a really important one. Kitchen fit out and labor, well, insurance, that's a cost, but it's not the biggest one. Ingredients, the food itself, what you're gonna actually be cooking with, okay? Absolutely. So in a restaurant business, those are your two biggest costs, your food cost and your people wages cost, all right? The bigger the cost, the more time you need to spend on it and get real comfortable with your forecast and your assumptions. Okay, because these are the big pieces of cost. If you get insurance wrong, you're going to be off by a few $100s a month. But if you get food costs and people costs wrong, your entire plan is kind of out the door. Okay, so we're going to spend time with these two costs. But I need to simplify it. So for food costs, we're going to just say is 27%. This is a completely variable cost. Variable cost means if the revenue goes up, this type of cost goes right up with it. Is a close relationship, okay? If you're not selling food, you're not buying food. Yes, so it's completely variable cost, all right? It's quite predictable, okay? If you know what your sales are, you can determine what your food costs are gonna be. Normally, I would split this into a lot more detail. I would look at the more important or the most costly parts of your food costs, like your meats, your fish, right? The poultry, all that stuff. we would go further into all of this. We would do market research. We would look at what is the expected pricing per pound, all of this stuff, right? But here we arrived at the conclusion that it was 27%. We're just going to keep it simple. So what does that mean? For every $100 in sales, $27 are going right out the door in food. Okay, so this is a simple calculation. You're just multiplying revenue times 20%, 27%, and you arrive here. For your own business, what are the biggest costs for your business? Think about what those are for you, right? Do you have a good sense on what percentage of your revenue that is every month? Super important for you to understand that. All right, now let's talk about people. So in a restaurant, you have to think about, okay, who are the people that I need? And when am I going to stack them up, right, as the operation ramps up? So here I made a list. Who are the people we need in the front of the house, right? So the people that are seeing the clients, touching the clients. And then who are the people that I need in the back of the house, right, in the kitchen? Right, so I've outlined, this was something I did with the owner, right? He knew this business better than I did. So he told me, I think I'm gonna need this, and that. And according to this much traffic and this much volume, we know when we're bringing in the assistant manager, when we're bringing additional help, right? So here we have an hourly rate for each of these roles. But here on the right, we have number of hours per week. Most of us think of hours in a weekly basis, right? It's easier to think about that way. Notice not everybody is starting day one, right? That's a lot of overhead. That's going to destroy you, right? So how can you start the operation when things are still slow, and when do you start bringing in more resources? All right, so these numbers are on a weekly basis. We need to turn them into monthly. So what's the next step? I'm going to take, well, first off, what's the weekly rate, right? The hourly rate times the number of hours gives you what the wage is for that week. But now to turn it into a month, we're going to multiply by 4.3, which is on average how many weeks we have in a month. And then we land at these numbers, right? So for the first month in April, we are expecting to spend $21,000 on people-related wages, all right? As we ramp up, we end the year at roughly $35,000. This is overhead, guys, right? So super important to have a really good understanding of how much you're spending on this on a monthly basis, and do you have enough cash to fund yourself for the first few months. If this makes sense, give me a thumbs up, please, on the chat. People following the labor costs. Yeah, okay, so this is simple math still here. All right. For your own business, right? You have staff as well, right? How much are they working? Are you paying them on an hourly basis, on a monthly basis? In this situation, we're assuming everybody is a contractor, is a 1099. But if you have employees, then we need to go further, right? We need to put in some fringe benefits, some payroll tax, right? Additional things. But keeping it simple, we're going to say everybody here is 1099, which is pretty typical for a restaurant. Yes, I can. I am seeing a question here. Can you share the presentation? Yes, I can share the presentation. Yes, at the end, I'll send it to Mauricio, and Mauricio can circulate if you guys want to see it. Absolutely. All right, y'all. So we've gone through the, oh, yeah, Mauricio.
All right. One thing, we will be posting this video on our YouTube channel as well. It might take us a couple of weeks to get there, but you will see this presentation on our channel as well.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so we've gone through the biggest three pieces of our P&L. We've modeled revenue. We've modeled our two biggest costs, right? Our food costs and our people costs. So right here, we already have most of the work done. So I'm going to go fast through what is left of the P&L. So what is left? Rent and utilities, absolutely. Okay? That's a fixed cost. It's not going to be as fixed as I made it to look here. Utilities do fluctuate, right? But just to keep it simple, and actually I made a mistake here. I went from 12 to 11, which didn't make sense. Sorry. I was copying this and pasting late last night and anyway, got the wrong version. Marketing, right? Any business that's B2C where you're going to consumers directly, you're going to need some marketing spend, right? So we have a marketing budget that we're planning for. We have insurance, licenses, permits, supplies, subscriptions, security, right? Our bookkeeper, right? Everybody else is in other operating expenses or other selling, general and administrative expenses. Everything is here. Notice again, I have this little line here, miscellaneous and cushion. Always build in some cushion, okay? For things that you may not anticipate. All right, so notice, okay, so we're here, other SG&A, okay. So now let's add both components of SG&A. So labor, which we calculated a bit ago, plus this number, and now this is our total SG&A or our total overhead. We're starting at $45,000 a month, and we're ramping up to about $57,000 a month. A lot of these costs are fairly fixed. Not all of them, but they're on the fixed side of things. Notice as a percentage of revenue, the story looks a bit depressing. What this means as a percentage of revenue, if you're over 100%, that means your cost is exceeding your revenue. That means you don't have enough revenue that month to cover for your expenses. And that's expected when you're starting out, which means you need more cash on the bank to fund yourself, okay? But then, right, as volume increases, our revenue is increasing, we're starting to get this number to a more comfortable place, close to 50% of our revenue. All right, and now what's our bottom line? Revenue minus our food cost, which was our COGS, minus all of our SG&A, and we arrive at operating income. Okay, this is your margin. This is the margin that you compare yourself to when you're talking to other restaurants or you're looking at what other restaurants are doing or in your business. Operating income is the margin that matters. All right, so we're going from a negative number, right, which we expect. We turn the tide in month 5, right? In August, now we flip to green. And we ramp up very quickly after that. By the end of the year, we're at 26% margins, which is actually very good for a restaurant business. Ooh, sorry guys, my battery, let me plug in. Let's not, okay. All right guys, so 26%. This is the thing, so after you've arrived here, that is pretty fast. I agree. I agree, and that's pretty fast. It depends if you've spent enough marketing dollars and you're really keeping an eye on your reviews, you're incentivizing people to share Google reviews and stuff, you can get here. And remember, this guy already had a business, another restaurant. So he's gonna ramp up a lot faster. But yeah, we landed at 26% at the end of the year. Okay, what else here? Let me see. Operating income. So this number is important. We're going to see this number again. We're almost done, guys. Hang in there with me. This is the kind of number, by the way, getting back to we ramped up there fast. If you don't plan, if you wing it and hope for the best, I guarantee you're not going to get there. But if you plan, you've mobilized the teams, you've thought through it all, you have the systems, you have the people, you have the standard operating procedures, you have the marketing, you've done everything the right way, your ramp up is significantly faster. And I can tell you because I recently worked with a restaurant who they opened a restaurant and it took them so long to ramp up. It took them like a year to build it out, which was entirely too long. And it took them over a year to ramp up fully. We did it again with a second location. They hired me for the business plan, and we cut that time in a third. We cut it in a third, right? One, this person already had gone through it once, had learned some big lessons. And two, we were so organized. We had sequenced everything, mobilized all of the pieces that we were able to get there a heck of a lot faster. All right. All right. So remember I said earlier that we were getting a loan for this, right? So let's look at the loan. The loan doesn't touch your P&L, not directly, but it is cash flow and you need to consider it, right? So in this scenario, the loan, we expected to get the loan for $200,000 at a rate of 6% over 5 years, which on a monthly basis means 16 months, okay? I won't bore you with all the math, but essentially here, right, there's sort of two pieces to the payment. There's the payment that goes towards principal, right, that brings down your balance every month, and then there's the payment for interest. All right, so between both pieces, the principal and the interest, it's about $7,000 hit every month. All right, so it's significant. Not capturing this is a mistake. You need to understand what you're paying on your loan, even if it doesn't all hit your P&L. All right. So last piece, and I promise you, we're almost wrapped up. So let's look at the cash flow. So I brought the operating income, right, that we looked at here, right? This in the green line. I brought it back because is a proxy for cash flow where we need to start. It's not exact, but it's a proxy. Remember that build out investment for the first 3 months that we looked at, right? The GC, the designer, the architect. All right, we need to bring that into the fold. So those first 3 months, that was cash that was going out. That was $250,000. And then we have the loan components, right? We're paying off this loan. So we're starting here, net cash flow. I'm turning this into a negative. Out represents, or in parentheses, negative means the cash is leaving. If it's positive, that means the cash is coming in, right? So this was an investment. This was money that was coming out the first 3 months. So this becomes negative. In April, when we first opened, we're already in the red. And on top of that, we need to make our loan payments. So we're further in the red, right? So take a look at what happens here. You are in the red for the first 8 months. And it's in month 9 that you actually turn to positive cash flow. All right. That's a pretty telling story. All right. So some people may say, well, our initial investment was $250,000, right? Which is the first 3 months, the build out. That would be incorrect because you need to capture the cash flow, the negative cash flow of those first months. So if I sum from here, January through August, I sum these numbers right here, all the negative ones, I land at $340,000 of investment. Are y'all following me here? Is that making sense? Okay. All right, guys, we're done. So we've built a P&L. We're basically done with our P&L. Now let's summarize it and let's look at the yearly numbers. We build this out on a monthly basis and we looked at the first 12 months. In reality, we would build this out on a monthly basis, at least for the first 2 years. And then we can make some high level assumptions for years 3, 4, and 5. So if I sum all of these months, this is where we land, right? Total revenue, 700,000. What was our margin that year? It was pretty crappy. It wasn't great. Okay. But year 2, so what I did to make it simple is I took the December numbers, so the end of the year numbers, and I flatlined it. When I flatline, I'm assuming that's a steady state. That means I'm fully ramped up. This is where I feel like we're just going to kind of stay around here. In reality, there would be some growth, there would be a little bit of inflation, there would be some tweaks, but again, for keeping it simple, I flatlined this revenue. So if you notice, all the numbers for years 2, 3 through 5 are the same. All right. At the end of the day, the idea is we land at about 26% margin. Okay. Again, this is the kind of thing that we would vet with data from other restaurants. This is data that you can tap into to really see, like, am I thinking through everything? Does this look reasonable? I remember when we arrived at this number, I told the owner, I said, you know, these margins are really rich for a restaurant. What makes your business so special that you think your margins are that you're so profitable, right? And for this particular style of restaurant, the ingredients were quite inexpensive. So a lot of it sat in the food cost, okay? And so anyway, that's it. So, question, and this is my last poll question for the group. Mauricio, if you don't mind activating that question here on the screen. My question for you is, if you were the owner of this business and I put a plan like this in front of you, we put this plan together, would you open that new location? What do you think? Would you move forward? No, or not sure? Understanding, right? The amount of capital, how long it takes for you to start turning a profit. What do you guys think? I'm really curious. I'd love to get everybody's participation here. There's no wrong answer. This is more of your opinion. All of us have different levels or different risk appetites. I have 4 responses. There's more people in the room. Who are we missing, guys? Would you move forward with the plan or not? Okay. Well, we got 4 answers and it's split between yes and not sure. Okay. Okay. Not sure. Can somebody that answered not sure tell me why you're not so sure about moving forward? What makes you hesitate? Completely fair. What makes you hesitate?
That was me because I didn't completely understand the whole forecast. So I will
The
have
whole what,
to
I'm sorry?
the forecast. So I
The
will have to
forecast?
I will have to watch the video again because I have been on and off throughout the video throughout
Okay.
this meeting. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, no, I know I was going fast, guys, and so apologies. I know this was a lot. This was a lot. There's a lot of material here, and believe me, this is super simple compared to a real sort of detailed plan. Okay, anybody else? Or maybe you want to move forward. Tell me why. Either way, I like to hear from the room why you think it's a good idea or not so sure.
I think it's a
And I
great,
wasn't, go ahead, Frank.
I'm gonna
Frank,
let the
go
other
ahead.
person talk. I'm gonna mute myself and allow the other person to talk.
Okay. Was it
I
Tuesday?
said I wasn't sure because I am risk adverse.
Because what, I'm sorry?
I am risk adverse, and the risk is very high. So
Fair.
looking at the risk, I'm thinking, wow, what if COVID happens?
Absolutely, right?
I mean, what do I
Absolutely.
do? So, I mean, we know with COVID, everybody stopped going out to eat.
100%, right? Yeah, these businesses really suffered during the pandemic.
Yep.
So that's fair. That's a completely fair assessment. Anybody else? I'm going to ask for one more person to volunteer and tell me what they think about this plan. Would they move forward or not?
I would move forward.
You would? Okay, tell me
Yes.
why.
Well, if I hire someone like you and you help me put this together and I can see, and because I also have my business now and I know that at the beginning, I'm always involved. I don't count my first 3 months ever to make any money. And if
Yeah.
I lose on the next 3, I'm still okay because I already have that projection.
Yeah.
So, but if I do have this plan, like you have shown us, it will make me a little more confident. I will have more confidence because I can see that if I'm involved and I get my assistant manager coming in within the next 2 to 3 months, making sure that it's trained, he or she is trained the way I've been running stuff. And then I get the assistance, then I can move forward without being there to continue something that I know is growing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think about something that might happen or not, because I already had put a plan together. So I'm just fighting towards that goal with something that it was, my projection is written and I'm following the plan. So every month I'm getting those targets towards my goals. I guess I'm a little more of a risk taker,
Yeah.
but
So if you have a plan in front of you and you understand your plan, you're ready to move forward.
if I understand my plan, I will move forward and hit every target. If the only thing that I will not do is I will not go into anything where I will not continue to hit my targets. That's all.
Fair. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's so good answers here. Thank you all for sharing a little bit. Let me tell you what actually happened in this scenario. The numbers are slightly different, but the outcomes were pretty similar. The owner decided to not pursue the location expansion. Okay? It's one thing to see it on a screen, and it's another thing where you're coming up with $340,000 towards something, right? It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And so he felt like it was too risky. What he decided, though, now understanding the plan and understanding just how involved and how much money it was going to take, he decided that he was going to continue with his current operation and build up his cash more so that he could fund the whole thing himself. Right? Because remember, that loan was burdening his cash flow, his monthly cash flow, by about $7,000. If that loan didn't exist, he would have turned to positive cash flow a lot faster. All right. So how you fund these projects matters, right? So he put it on hold. Okay. That's what he did. Okay. And I think I'm more risk averse. I'm pretty sure I would have also not moved forward, not with the current plan as it stood. But that is the beautiful thing about going through this exercise, right? You get rid of a lot of those blind spots. You have to think about it step by step, piece by piece. And it really helps you see the whole picture and really understand, like, just, how much cash do you really need, right? You know, when you start a business that for the first several months, you may have no revenue coming in, but the bills still need to get paid, right? Okay. All right. So another thing, once we build this sort of model, right, we start playing with scenarios, we start making changes to, for example, what happens if my volume increases 10% every year? Right? What does that make to what does that mean for my bottom line? How much faster can I recoup my investment? You start playing with different inputs that are highly sensitive to see what happens. Many times you may have a rosy outlook of your base scenario, right? Remember, your base scenario is what you think is going to actually happen. But you have to stress test it. You have to stress that model. What if we get into a pandemic? I know that's sort of like very big out there, but tariffs, right? A lot of our businesses are struggling with these tariffs, right? Our raw material prices have gone up, right? Costs have gone up, labor costs have gone up. So understanding what's happened in the macroeconomic environment and in your industry specifically, you can start to outline what are some of the key risks, what things could happen that could really put, that could really stress my operation. And when does this model break? At what point does this no longer make sense? Right? So you walk into these decisions with eyes wide open, right? With confidence. And if your decision is to move forward, like Frank said, you're even more confident because now you have a plan in front of you. And if you were on the fence about it, maybe is what makes you pull away and say, you know what, I'm not ready for this. Too much risk, not the right timing, whatever it is. So after something like this, we would calculate, there's all types of financial and investment metrics that are very important and relevant for something like this. There is internal rate of return, annualized rate of return, present value of cash flows, all types of metrics. We don't have the time to get into this here today. But anyway, know those exist, know that those exist, and those are super important. So in this scenario, the 340,000 investment, it would take 20 months to pay back that amount of money. So if you took all of your positive cash flow in month 21, you would recoup the investment. That's another metric to think about. Does it take you 3 years to recoup it? Do you recoup it in a year? What can you live with, right? What is your risk tolerance? All right. I think I've basically kind of went through everything. You know, just to wrap up, I guess, like, and I said this earlier, putting a plan together, being really thoughtful and rigorous with your planning can be the difference between you succeeding or completely failing and even going bankrupt, God forbid, is real. Like when that much capital is at stake, you know, it matters. If you can increase your success, your odds 2 and 3 times, do it. It really is worth the time. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So this business case that we went through, this plan was for a business that was very tangible, right? You're
Yeah.
selling products, you're buying product and selling product.
Yep.
We didn't really, I guess, get a chance to go over if you're just selling services,
Mhm.
where you say to yourself, all right, I have to do 1 million this year. And then I guess you start with that number and then you work backwards, right? Because you're selling services. So I guess that's one that I'll be interested in talking to you about. Obviously not today, but I don't know how, if you're open to
Absolutely.
that.
So you can build a business plan for any business. It doesn't matter what you sell. The logic and the thought process is different, right? Because you're selling a service. But the same rules apply. Now, what makes it difficult to forecast is if you're very early stage, if you're just starting out, if your business is very variable, you haven't reached sort of steadiness of any sort. Putting a financial forecast is basically throwing a dart into the air and hoping it lands somewhere. You're very much guessing, okay? That's the truth. The analysis is more for you to understand maybe what is my cost structure? What do I need to make a year or a month for this to make sense? Is more that rather than a true forecast. Because the truth is you don't really know when you're starting out and when you're in early stage business. Once you reach more stability and you understand the sector, or you can talk to other companies that are in business and have been in business for longer, you can start triangulating around forecasts and get more accurate. So I don't know, Tunde, does that help or give you any additional insight?
It does. It does. But I think nonetheless, and I'll be transparent. Like you said, I used to have an architectural company a number of years ago, and when the recession hit in 08, 09, every architect, well, most architects went out of business because there was no more construction, no more building, etc. But what I found out then was, even though I I was the designer, the marketer, and all, what I understood then after that incident was while I understand architecture, I realized I didn't understand the business of architecture. And, I didn't have enough streams of income outside just the design, right?
Mm-hmm.
If design fails, then you're essentially out of work. So that's, frankly speaking, makes me very pensive about moving forward with anything else, even though I have to. So this session has been very, very helpful in the ways I should be looking at,
Yeah, even if it's not a business plan yet, but it's still a planning tool, right? What are
Right.
the types of services that I have? How should I price? What needs to happen in order for me to sustain my monthly cost? At what point can I, once revenue hits this much, then I can start scaling also my operation and bring in more help, right? It's still a planning tool, and it forces you to break your business into smaller pieces that you can actually think about concretely, right? So, in a formal business plan, also depending, for example, if you're in construction or home improvement, there's all types of market research that you can bring that are specific to your zip code, to your city, to your state. You can start using sort of growth expectations for your specific market, right? So that's something that you have to do really to really get kind of comfortable with your forecast. These numbers don't just, you don't pull them out of a hat. You need to triangulate, you need to do research, you need to compare to others in your industry so you feel comfortable with what you're putting in front of whoever, a bank, an investor, your own self. All right?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Mauricio, I don't know if maybe anything you want to add here before we
I think this was a very thorough presentation, Natalia. Thank you so much. And we had a good level of engagement with questions and participation. I'd like to ask one more time if anybody has any other questions or anything else that you'd like Natalia to address before we come to a close.
We have time to spare, guys. I was worried about time. So we have time. So if you have questions, maybe about your specific business, take advantage of the time. I'm here, I'm open. I can help you think through some things for your own business if you'd like. Or any part of this presentation where it was a little confusing, you want me to sort of kind of explain it again or something, happy to do that.
Well, you also have Natalia's contact information on the screen. If you want to reach out to her directly, there's her email, URL for her website and social media. As I said, we will be posting this presentation on our YouTube channel in about a couple of weeks. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Natalia, I would like to thank you once again for this presentation, and we hope we can bring you back soon to explore more on how to do financial forecasting and the kind of things that we need to consider on how to put together the business plan and business strategy and financial forecasting.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, hold on. We have a hand that is raised. Antonio, go ahead.
Hi, Natalia. How are you?
Hola, Antonio. How are you?
How's everything? Good, thank you. Just really quick, I wanted to to know what are the steps in order for us to to get together. I mean, what would you need if we wanted to work with you, so we can do all this plan for a business? Can you walk me through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach out to me in any of these forms right here. My email, you got my Instagram, website too. There's a contact us page, so you can reach out to me in any of these ways. And absolutely, we can have a free consult and kind of talk about your business, your vision, your issues, and we can go from there. Yeah, happy to assist. Absolutely. And
Perfect,
by the way,
thank you.
sorry, go ahead, Antonio.
And where are you located?
I'm in Atlanta.
Okay.
I am in Atlanta. Yeah, but all of this stuff, by the way, this is easily done remote. And if I need to travel, I kind of have customers all over the United States. It's really not a problem. We can certainly arrange for that. This type
Okay,
of
perfect.
thank you, Antonio. This type of thinking, right? So when you think of like a financial person, right? You go through this structure and you break down your business into all of these little components. This is not just for a business plan. It's for setting your budget for the year. is for doing your strategic plan for 3 years, really big vision, big goals. How are we going to get there? Right? The same structure, the same type of logic and thinking is applied to anything like that. If you are perhaps thinking about bringing equity, pitching to investors, you need something like this. If you are thinking about expanding and maybe you want to play out and model out what does that expansion look like, right? We're back to the same thing. If you want to make a bold move and maybe make an acquisition, I come from the acquisitions and investments world. We have to put a business plan. What are we going to do when we acquire this thing, right? Maybe you want to expand geographically, or you want to expand into a new product and a new service, right? All of that is going to require planning and this type of thought process. And so super useful, even if you're not building the plan yourself or the financial piece yourself, being able to sort of think in that logical step-by-step manner is going to really benefit you, period, for your business. So anybody else? Any last questions, last things? Right. Now everybody's getting ready to go home and I'm holding everybody up. So
So Natalia, once again, thank you so much. Muchísimas
Absolutely.
gracias por este tiempo
Claro
que
que
nos
sí.
dedicaste. We really appreciate all your time and your expertise on this particular topic. So we look forward to having you back with us. In the meantime, I want to thank everybody who connected and joined us today. Maria, Sandra, Jeffrey, Frankie, and all the others that left a little while ago. This was a very, very in-depth presentation and a very useful topic, particularly for anybody starting their business, thinking of starting their business, or growing whatever business they already have. So we look forward to bringing more of these presentations for our members in our community. And if anybody has any questions or comments, you can always reach out to us at info@hccmc.org. And writing that down in the chat, info@hccmc.org. And we'll have a networking event this Thursday at the DoubleTree in Gaithersburg. We'll look forward to seeing everybody there. And then in the meantime, we want to wish everybody a good evening and seeing you soon. Natalia, gracias.
Mauricio, do you mind just one last thing
Sure.
before we get off the phone?
Absolutely.
Guys, so I really hope this was helpful. I know we covered a lot, so a lot of meat in there. Mauricio and I have been talking about, if there's enough interest and it seems like it's value add, maybe doing it in a workshop type of setting where we kind of spend more time dissecting everything. We start talking about your own business. So we'll see what comes out of this. Please provide feedback to Mauricio so he can get to me. I would love to know, what would you like to see in something like this next time? What did you find really helpful? What did you think was, confusing? I want to be better at what I do and imparting this education. And so I am all ears and I welcome the feedback. Thank you. That's it, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks, everybody.